Hey everybody, hope you're having a great day today. If you have any questions from yesterday, please make sure you either write it on the Google Doc or feel free to stop by the Open Meet and ask any questions that you want, or just come and say hello. Today we're going to continue talking about cube root functions. We're just going to expand it a little bit. So yesterday we really just had one or two transformations happening. Today we're just going to talk about if there's just one more and just talk about what those transformations are, and then do a little bit of finding the average rate of change between 2 points. So first thing here, they give us g of x equals 2 times the cube root of x minus 3 plus 4. It says describe the transformations from the graph of f of x equals the cube root of x to the graph of g. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is describe the transformation. So we always start left to right. The outside is being multiplied by 2, so that would be a vertical. Smaller here, that would be a vertical. Now would it be a stretch or a shrink? Well, it's greater than 1, so that's why it would be a stretch. By a factor of 2. Now what else is happening? Well, we're subtracting 3 on the inside, so that's a horizontal translation. 3 units right. And the last thing, we're adding 4 on the outside, so that's a translation again, but that's vertical because it's on the outside, so it's a vertical translation. 4 units up. Alright, so those are the 3 things that we're having with the transformations. Now they want us to graph G. So in order to graph G, we just make ourselves a little table. And with our table from yesterday, if you remember, we want to use the perfect square factor, perfect cube numbers here. So usually I'd put 0 in the middle, but if I use 0, I'm going to get -3. I'm going to have the cube root of -3, and that's a problem for me. So instead I want to think, well, what would I make x so that the inside is equal to 0? So if you want, you could put x minus 3 equal to 0 to solve, to find out what that would be, which is 3. And then if you want it to be 1, you make it 4. And then if you want to make it 8 inside, it would need to be 11. And -1 would be 2. And -8 would be -5. So if I plug in 3, I get 0. Cube root of 0 is 0, times 2 is 0, plus 4 is 4. This would give me the cube root of 1, which would be 1, times 2, which is 2, plus 4 is 6. 11 here would give me 8, which would be 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. And if you notice this pattern here, what's happening is this would then be 2. And this would be 0. So I'll go ahead and I will graph the points that I can. So I have -5, 0. I have 2, 2. 3, 4. 4, 6. And 11, 8, which is over here, so I'll just know that I can't go past that. And I just draw my line with a nice smooth curve. Alright. So that is the graph of G. Domain and range for all of these, remember, would be all real numbers because the domain is not restricted. So we have these 3 here. It just says compare the graph. You don't have to graph them, just compare the graph. So what transformations are happening with these 3 functions here. So if you want to pause the screen, and when you're ready, press play, and we will talk about what the transformations are. Alright, so the first one, we're multiplying on the inside. Sometimes it's a bit hard to see with decimals, but remember, so we're multiplying by 1/2 inside. So we know it's a horizontal stretch or shrink. But which one is it? Is it a stretch or a shrink? So remember, horizontal, the factor is the reciprocal of what you're multiplying by. So if we're multiplying by 1/2, the factor is 2. So if the factor is greater than 1, it's a stretch. So it's a horizontal stretch by a factor of 2. Now we're not completely done yet because we still have this plus 5 on the outside. Since we're adding 5 on the outside, it is a vertical translation For here, we're multiplying by 4 in front. So if we're multiplying by 4 in the front, that's going to be a vertical. Now, is this stretch or shrink? Well, the factor for vertical is exactly what you see. So the factor is 4. So that means that it's greater than 1. So it's a vertical stretch by a factor of 4. And we're subtracting 1 in the inside, so it is a horizontal translation 1 unit right. And for our last one here, it's kind of tough to see this the way that it's written. So if I could just rewrite this, it might make a clearer picture for you of what the transformations are. So if I rewrote this, remember we want to keep the signs with it. So if I put the x first, it'd have to be negative x plus 4. So now let's talk about the transformations. Well, we're multiplying x on the inside by a negative. So when you're multiplying by negative 1, it's a reflection. And since you're multiplying inside, or just the x by negative 1, it's a reflection in the y-axis. Now we're adding 4 on the inside, so that's going to be a horizontal translation. 4 units left. And these are the transformations for these 3 functions from the parent function f of x equals the cube root of x. So try this one out on your own. See what you get here. Pause the screen. You're going to describe the transformations and then try and graph it with these 3 transformations that are happening. When you're ready, press play and we'll watch the answer come up. So the first thing I see here is a negative sign in the front, so that's going to be a reflection. Since it's happening in front of the radical sign, it's a reflection in the x-axis. Let's move that one. Reflection in the x-axis. The outside is being multiplied by a half, so it's a vertical shrink by 1/2. We're adding 2 on the inside, so that is a horizontal translation left 2. And we are subtracting 4 on the outside, so that is a vertical translation down 4. Alright, so those are our transformations. Now to talk about our graph, we're again going to want to insert our little table here. So if I wanted the inside to be 0, I'd have to make it negative 2. To make it 1, it'd be negative 1. To make it 8, we'd have 6. And then negative 3 and negative 10. So if we plug in negative 2, again it's going to be 0 inside, which is going to make 0 minus 4, which is negative 4. 1 would give me, negative 1 would wind up giving me the cube root of 1, which is 1, times negative 1/2 is negative 1/2, minus 4 is negative 4.5. 6 would give me 2. 6 would give me 8. Cube root of 8 is 2. 2 times negative 1/2 is negative 1. Minus 4 is negative 5. Negative 3 is going to end up giving me negative 3.5. And then negative 10 would be negative 8, which would be negative 2, which would be 1, which would be negative 3. So these would be the ones I graph. So I will graph negative 10, negative 3. And then I have negative 3, negative 3.5. And then negative 2, negative 4. Negative 1, negative 4.5. And and 6, negative 5. So I'll just graph this with a nice smooth curve as best as possible. And there's my graph. Alright, so the last piece of this, they are giving us two cube root functions here. It says the graph of the cube root function m is shown in the graph. Compare the average rate of change of m, this graph, to the average rate of change of h of x, which is h of x equals the cube root of 1/4 x, over the interval 0 to 8. So the first thing we have to do is we have to figure out, well, what is the average rate of change from 0 to 8 for the graph. So when x is 0, what's the y value of the function? Well, at 0 we have 0. So we're going from 0 to 0. And if we plug in 8, well, right here, so that would be 8. So we have 8, 8. Alright, so those are the two things here. Now, average rate of change, that's just like the slope. So what is the slope over this point? Well, in other words, if you were drawing a line from this point to this point, well, what would the slope be of that line? Well, the slope of that line would be change of y over change of x, which is 8 over 8, which is 1. Alright, so now we need to find out the average rate of change of here. So if I plug in 0 for x, I'd get 0. The cube root of 0 is 0. So I'm going to have 0, 0. Now, if I plug in 8, I'm going to have to take 1/4 of 8, which is 2, and I'm going to take the cube root of 2. So to take the cube root of a number in your calculator, I'd press 3 and then the math button, or you just press the math button and then 4. Once you press the math button, that would be the cube root there. And then the cube root of 2. Is 1.25999. So what I'm going to do now, since point is 8, and we'll just round it to 1.2. So we'll just do 1.26 divided by 8, because that would be our change of y over change of x, and we would get 0.1575. So the average rate of change is much bigger for function m. Okay. If they wanted to know how many times bigger it was, you do 1 divided by this to find out how many times bigger, which would probably be around 6 or so. So yeah, so that would be how you answer these questions. Alright guys, so there's an online textbook problem today. If you have any questions on any of these things, please just let me know, either through the Google Doc or attending the Open Meet at 1 o'clock. Alright, have a good day.